Hi, this is Nathan. I'm glad you could join us for the Wad Fam Chalk Pod, a place of humor, analysis, and excitement. But don't take my word for it. Find out for yourself on today's episode of the Wad Fam Chalk Pod.
Andrew, you're fiddling with your mic in some way that's coming through.
Sorry.
No worries.
I started in the beginning and then I stopped and then...
Please.
It's okay, I'll fiddle with my sister's scrunchie instead.
Hello and welcome to the Wad Fam Chalk Pod. I'm Dylan Weaver.
I'm Andrew Sabo.
And we're here to talk about, I don't know, another episode of Adventures in Odyssey. What else do we do?
I was gonna say, that seems to be the correct choice.
I think that's the only thing we do.
Yeah, we're here today to talk about the Veggie Tales. Only
No.
if you sub to us on Patreon. Actually, if we do make a
No.
Patreon, I would definitely have that as a goal.
No, if we do a Patreon and we do that, we should do 321
321
Penguins
Penguins. Oh,
for
yeah.
the Phil Lawler connection.
Yes. It must all have some loose connection.
Right, exactly. But no, we're talking about episode 293 of Adventures in Odyssey, entitled "A Code of Honor."
A pun, as it were.
Yes, indeed. This episode aired 2 weeks after the last episode we covered, on December 17th, 1994.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good one.
Yeah, it was written and directed by Mr. Paul McCusker.
Mm-hmm.
Episode 7 on album 22, The Changing Times. It's a kind of different episode from what we've been covering, but I'm here for it. It is in direct reference to Adventures in Odyssey books that were coming out around the same time.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Starting in 92, Paul McCusker was writing and releasing just like small, essentially like your 12 chapter kids books kind of deal.
Yeah.
That were set in the time before Adventures in Odyssey. So they're set in Odyssey with Wit, but before
Connie and everything.
Exactly. So kind of in that between Recollections and Connie period of time. And so...
Wait, what is Recollections?
Recollections is the episode about Wit getting Wit's End.
Oh, yeah.
So it's after he's got Wit's End, but before, like, the characters that we're used to are in the show. So I think there are, like, 12 of those books that were released.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were later released in I think 3 collected volumes with 4 books each. And I have one of those volumes.
Really?
So
have you read it?
Yeah. Oh yeah, as a child. And then in a moment of whimsy, a couple nights ago, knowing this was coming up, I read the Secret of Robinwood, which is an episode that this episode is referencing. Or is a book that this episode is referencing. So yeah, I sat down and read that in like a half hour. So I have additional context.
Oh,
Look at
wow.
me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Look at you. I'm so proud.
I know.
It
was fun when I was like, wait a second. I think I have the book they're referencing. And I looked over on my shelf and I was like, it's there. And what else am I going to do with my time?
Yeah. Well, I've been having some trouble sleeping at night, mostly just because I'm, not out and about like I normally am. And so my body is like, are we really going to sleep now? And so I've been listening to like an episode or 2 of Adventures in Odyssey before I go to bed, like every night now.
There you go. It's a good comfort food.
It really is. And honestly, Chalk Squad, highly would recommend. There are some episodes that I've listened to that, I really want to cover with you.
I I'm definitely open to covering episodes, man.
Yeah, that is something I'm willing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And then our last bit of information, off the top is we do have two new cast members for this episode. In addition to returning Jason, Jack, and Connie, we have Flo Deary as Emma Douglas. This is Emma Douglas's second appearance. She was first in the in Recollections, but this is her only appearance being voiced by Flo Deary, who was the voice of Jocasta Nu, who was the librarian Jedi in Star Wars: The Clone Wars.
Whoa! Yo, I totally hear it now. What?
Yeah.
Seems to be a blip in the archives.
and then we also have David Bueller voicing Billy McPherson, as the he has only voiced Billy McPherson in Odyssey, and he's done it he does it for this episode and then a couple in the future. Spoiler alert that he comes back.
Yep.
And
there she is.
All right.
It is a surprisingly small cast this episode.
Yeah, I like it though, especially
Yeah, well,
after
I mean,
coming off of like our oversaturated episodes between
With
Tom for
everybody.
Mayor and A Name Not a Number, where just everyone was there.
Yeah.
It's fun to have like a small Odyssey episode.
Well, and there aren't any tangential kids in this one either.
Right. It's true. This is
No.
a kid-free episode.
Yeah.
All right.
Finally.
Yeah, this is what we've been waiting for.
Yeah.
All right.
Wait. Well, real quick.
Oh.
We were talking about Recollections. What album is Recollections on? Do you know?
I think the first one. It is.
Oh, okay.
It's like it's episode 19. But what album was it released on? I'm about to find out. Yeah, it was released on the first album.
Okay.
Yep.
There you go.
But yeah, that is an episode where Tom is telling Connie about the beginnings of Wit's End.
Yeah, I need to re-listen to that. I feel like that would be very important for, canonical reasons.
Yeah.
But I believe at this point in time, what we normally do...
Wait a second. I might have spread misinformation earlier. Yeah, I lied. Emma Douglas did not appear in an episode of Recollections. She appeared previously in an episode called Curious, Isn't It? Which was on album 8.
Yeah.
So that's my bad. Apologies.
Oh, yes, because Wit's getting married. Yep.
But she was in the books.
Oh, okay. She was in the books about the Israelites.
Yeah, well, they're kind of about the Israelites. We'll get into it later.
Okay.
But before we do that, I will roll the promo.
Coming up next time on Adventures in Odyssey, Jack and Jason discover a strange old diary that belonged to Wit. But why is it entirely in code? And what does this have to do with the mysterious gang who's been at work all over Odyssey? Will Jack and Jason discover what's really going on? Find out on the next Adventure in Odyssey.
That promo makes it out to be way more of a mystery than what it actually is.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it makes it feel like it's gonna be a very suspenseful episode, but this is very much a rainy day in the neighborhood. Things are slow. We found an old book, and now we want to learn more about it.
Yeah.
Episode.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of the weirdly of the episode where Mitch and Wit are tracking down Rudy Sutton.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Where it's just like, there's nothing, like, this is all, like, it's going to matter, but this is just kind of a fun episode with, like, a, like a buddy cop episode.
Yeah.
With 2 characters we like.
Yeah, and it's like a
that's-
pretty small
that's the
cast,
point.
and it's just like it's important because they're making it important, not because of stuff outside of it, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that way, you know, it will be important later. But I'm pretty sure the episode kicks off with isn't it Connie and is it Jack talking about crime in Odyssey?
No, that's not for quite a while.
Are you sure?
Yep.
Okay. Go ahead.
It starts out with Jack showing up at Wit's End and kind of checking out where Jason's staying.
Yeah,
and
because
Jack
he's at Wit's house.
Yeah, and Jack feels really bad about the fact that he's living at Wit's house and Jason's living at Wit's End. They talk about the fact they haven't seen each other in 10 years. Jason, throughout all this episode, is referring to Jack as Uncle Jack.
Yeah.
Which I think is really sweet.
Oh, yeah.
And then,
it's adorable.
And then Jack
it gives me a
keeps
very
trying
much
to-
a don't call me Pop situation,
Yes.
but it's not, like, bad.
Right. It's doing the same thing as that does, but in this scenario it's not Jason being like oblivious or a jerk. It's this thing of like he grew up with Jack being called Uncle Jack.
Yeah.
Hasn't seen the man in 10 years, and so that's Jason going from his 20s to his 30s, which is like one of those big transitions in like dropping the formalities between people. But now he's going back and seeing someone he hasn't seen for years, and he's kind of falling back on that thing of like, well, I always called you Uncle Jack, so that's just what I'm gonna do. And Jack's being like, look, like we're more peers now. You can drop the uncle thing. We don't need that. Like it was a term of respect when you were a child, but you are no longer a child.
Yeah, I'm in a very strange period right now where I feel it more natural to call my friends' parents by their first names rather than Mr. and Mrs., Haverstick or whatever. But I don't quite have the confidence to do that. Like, it feels wrong for me to say Mr. Haverstick or Mrs. Haverstick rather than Doug and Dixie.
Right.
Shout out to Nathan's parents, by the way.
Yeah.
Friend of the pod.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a weird thing. That I'm glad that everybody goes through and it's not just me being indecisive. Because
nope. That is a natural part of growing up, Andrew.
Yeah. I only call my parents by their first name when I need to get their attention in a crowd. And that was as a child because I realized yelling mom does not specifically address Maria Sabo.
That's fair. Yeah, and so they then Jack and Jason go down into the basement of Wit's End to look around at things. Kind of they're getting Wit's workshop cleaned up while he's gone. That was something Wit kind of asked Jason to do, and Jason's gonna need the space if he's gonna be doing his own inventing and that sort of thing. So, we gotta do this. And so they so they're down there digging around. Jason points out a prototype imagination station that looks like a phone booth, which is a really fun shout out to both like the old school art for Odyssey and also the much maligned MIDI series of videos that Odyssey put out, both of which have like this more phone boothy kind of imagination station.
I thought that the animated series had like the kind of rocket ship thing.
Well, I think the new animated series did, but I think the original had the phone booth.
Oh, okay.
And like obviously like more recent Odyssey, like the best image that we get in artwork of the imagination station is from Eugene Returns, where it has this very like it looks like a spaceship.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what we're to assume. But this is shouting out the old school phone booth one.
Yeah.
Which I think is fun.
Which
and
I
that's
always...
also, sorry not to cut you off, but the phone booth one is also what is in, what's referenced in the book series, if I'm recalling correctly.
Oh, okay.
Which is just, another interesting layer.
Yeah, I always had this kind of, like, envision of, like almost like a sensory deprivation chamber situation where it's, like, kind of cylindrical, but it's, like, it's big, so they feel like they're walking around, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
I guess it's more of closer to a video game than anything.
Right, like the artwork, especially in Eugene Returns, shows it as being like more a thing where like you would sit in it, whereas I always kind of pictured it as this metal egg that had like a hatch, because we always hear that hatch.
Yeah.
And then you open it up and you're like standing in front of like the control panel for the USS Enterprise or something.
Yeah.
Is where my mind has always been. But
Another thing I've been watching to put myself at sleep at night. The original Star Trek.
there you go.
But I mean, this is completely tangential, but I think it was always weird to me because then when they started bringing up the room of consequences, where there's this idea that it's an entire room, I was like, I thought that the imagination station was basically an entire room.
Yeah. And on the other hand, the room of consequences seems like it's more of a closet than a room.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah. Anyways, so then there's this whole thread throughout this episode of Jack having deja vu, where like the events happening around him are reminding him of a dream he had the night before. And it's very interesting. It's kind of a weird direction for Odyssey to go, I think, in some ways. I think
I
for
have
the most
opinions
part,
on this.
for the most part, it works. But yeah, like we'll get into it as we go on.
Yeah, it is weird because it's surprisingly charismatic for Adventures in Odyssey to acknowledge like somewhat prophetic dreams.
Yeah, and it gives it a more supernatural feel than a lot of Odyssey is willing to go.
Oh, 100%. Like,
With
they
the
always
exception
acknowledge
of, like,
the...
castles and cauldrons.
Yeah.
But, like...
Yeah.
But
that is an episode I do not want to cover.
Yeah, no, we've talked about that on and off air.
Although, I would love to cover the Mortal Coil.
Yeah? Alright. Maybe. Who knows?
Re-listen to it and give it some thought.
Okay. I may do that. Anyways, so
back to the episode.
So the thing that kind of triggers Jack's deja vu here is him seeing this leather-bound book that is, they open it up and it seems to be this kind of ledger. It's written in code, which Jason gets very excited about, and I think is great.
He gets so giddy about it, and Jack's like, "Oh, okay."
And there is this incredible moment where Jason then jokes to Jack about Whit being a secret agent.
Yeah.
Which is so funny because Jason knows for a fact that Whit has done secret agenty stuff, and is now just like taking this opportunity to make a funny comment about it at Jack's expense.
Is it official that Whit was a secret agent, or he worked with secret agencies?
So we talked about, I think officially in the canon of the show he was a secret agent, but like even the last episode,
Tasha worked with him.
Right. Well, yeah, Tasha worked with him, but Jason also made that comment about like making like he and Whit made sure that neither one of them knew what the other was working on.
Yeah.
Which implies that like, yeah, there's quite a bit going on there. But yeah, and then they go upstairs. Oh, you have something else?
No, go for it.
Oh yeah. So then they go upstairs, and and Connie's there, and I was just happy to see Connie.
Yeah, this is a good Connie episode.
Yeah. She gets, and I think this is emblematic of Odyssey post Wit, but Connie gets gets a little bit more of a front row seat, which makes sense because for Katie Lee, she is now like the senior member of the show.
Yeah.
Like, it's like her and Will Ryan have been there since essentially the beginning, and now all of the other actors and stuff, now that Hal Smith is gone, are newcomers.
Yeah.
So I like that she gets to, do a little bit more. And she doesn't do much in this episode, but it's still, I don't know. It feels better than the last couple times we've seen Connie.
Well, and I think what it is this whole idea of Wit isn't there, and so all these people have to are stepping up to function as Wit within the show. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so they're giving Connie more kind of respect because she's functioning more as a Wit character than she is as a Connie character. As the young stupid person that needs to make all the mistakes.
Yeah. I'm hoping that trend kind of continues. But we'll obviously be talking about it a lot. And so, Connie's talking, is reading the newspaper and talks about this uptick in robberies and vandalism in Odyssey. And Jack is kind of like, being from Chicago, I've come to expect this stuff, but this is Odyssey.
Yeah.
And the police are blaming all of it on a gang. It's implied that this gang is not the Bones of Wrath, but also it might be the Bones of Wrath. I don't know. Connie refers to the Bones of Wrath as not really a gang as much as like a team of bullies, which I think is really apt.
Oh yeah, no, it's 100% correct. Like they are just kids that are, screwing around. Like growing up, I mean, do you remember the Mills gang?
Yes.
Like, that was a thing, and it was like, me and Dylan are from a small town, and, a relatively small town, and, there's not much crime at all, but there was a group of, angsty juniors in high school, and they called themselves the Mills Gang, and I'm pretty sure they just smoked cigarettes, and I think they burned down a barn or something like that. Petty shoplifting and stuff.
Right. It's very much a butt of jokes kind of gang, not like a city gang.
Yeah, not like one that I'm genuinely afraid of.
Not at all. But yeah, so, and then Connie says this, I don't know, this line that winds up being also kind of prophetic, where she's just like, I wish that there was such thing as a good gang rather than all of these bad gangs.
That's what churches are.
Come to Andrew's new church, The Good Gang.
That's my new sitcom to take place of The Good Place.
Meeting every Sunday on Zoom.
Yep. We will each go outside and mow somebody else's lawn, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
But yeah,
the Good Grass Gang.
So then Jack's showing Connie this book. No. So that's where Jason comes down and explains that he cracked the code. Because that it's just a cipher where there are numbers corresponding with letters, and A is 5 and B is 6. Like, it's a pretty easy one. And he said he explains that the book is like a ledger of minutes from a book from a group called the Israelites. And they're all being referred to by like biblical names.
Yep.
but there's also a list of regular names with like words beside them, like paint and clean and garden. And Connie's looking through that list to see if she can recognize any of them. And she sees Emma Douglas, who was an employee at Wits End before she was. She's never actually met Emma, but she knows who she is.
Well, I mean, it says on the wiki that Emma Douglas was the first employee at Wits End.
Yeah. Aside from, I guess, Wit.
Yeah.
I guess he's not an employee as much as an employer, but whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, and so basically this episode takes, like, there's two pivotal points, right? So they find this code, and they have to crack the code, and then they have to try and find these people that are involved with it. And there's a lot of discussion throughout the episode of it being like, well, why are you doing this? And it's not really addressed until later, which I think is really well done. But there's basically, like, this kind of conversation between, like, Connie and Jack and Jason of it just being like, so what are you going to do if you find these people? You're just going to be like, hey, you remember that one time you did that thing? Like,
yeah. Yep.
But they end up going to Emma Douglas's house, right?
Right.
And speaking with her about the Israelites, and she originally denies it at first, says she knows nothing about it, and then Jack basically, like, reverse psychologies her or something. He tricks her into talking about the fact that she had her garage door painted, and that he knows that it was painted, because, like, something about getting the garage door painted at Wits End and stuff like that, and she's like, okay, fine, let's talk about the Israelites.
Yep. And so, yeah, she explains that the Israelites were a group that did good deeds in secret. The whole point was to help people out without trying to gain recognition.
Yeah. It's an inverse gang. Instead of doing bad things for recognition, they're doing good things without recognition.
Right. And she was... The only reason she knows about it is because one night she was woken up when someone knocked something over in her garage, and she was afraid that, she was being robbed or something. And so, she came out there and yelled, and then Wit ended up coming over, explaining the situation. And the whole reason these kids were trying to do garden work at night was because she was so stubborn that she wouldn't let anyone help her.
Yeah, so her husband died, and so she was all alone, and she wouldn't let anybody help her.
Yep.
And perfect religion is this, looking out for the orphans and widows. Get it, Israelites. I'm proud of you guys.
Yeah. So Wit came over, he explained the situation, and it, helped her learn to recognize her stubbornness.
But she also promised to never talk about it.
Yes. And so all of that is from The Secret of Robin Wood.
Oh, okay.
The book I read.
Did you read all of it?
Yeah.
For this episode?
Yeah. Secret Cave of Robin Wood is like, 12 10-page chapters with large font. Like, it is out. It took me like 20, 30 minutes to read.
Oh, okay.
And in it, we have a character, Mark Prescott, who is trying to join the Israelites, and he goes out on this thing, like on kind of his initiation night, to help out at Emma's house, and knocks over a hoe in the garage, making a noise, and then they all have to scatter. And then Wit has to go explain things to Emma. And so one of the cool things with the book is that all the Israelites are referred to not by their actual names, but by their gang names, which are all like Old Testament characters. And so the person who goes back after Wade explains the situation, the leader of the group, a kid named Jonathan, or codename Jonathan, goes back to the house and apologizes as the leader of the group because he just feels bad about the whole thing. And in this episode, Emma refers to, says that Billy McPherson came to her house and apologized.
And so now you, being the educated man yourself, can make that connection.
Right. Of like, so Billy was Jonathan. And like, of course, the parents are all like, yeah, it's a small town. Like, we know who these people are. And the kids probably know what their real names are as well. But it's like, you know, in a book being told from the kid Mark Prescott's perspective, he just refers to him as Jonathan. And then this episode's like, yeah, Jonathan. We're not going to use Jonathan because that would be confusing. His name is actually Billy McPherson.
And so then they go to they find Billy McPherson.
Yeah.
Well, they try to find Billy McPherson, and then they get lost. Jack and Jason get lost. And they, because he lives in, like, Connellsville or something like that. And, they get lost on the way there. They get a pothole, and then they end up going to a service station.
Yeah, so there's this whole thing, like, leading up to that where Jack explains that, like, Jack's back at wit's end talking with Connie and Jason.
Yeah.
Explaining the situation, and is like, you know, so it's Billy McPherson, and Connie's like, well, did you look him up in the phone book? And Jack's like, I did. He's not in there. But I was able to go to Odyssey High, and the person who organizes the class reunion was there and gave me the location of him. His family moved to Connellsville. And so there's a couple things here. One, I love that Jack has Wit's ability of just being able to
retrieve any information out of anybody and ever.
Yep. It's great. But the other thing is that somehow, because he's in Connellsville, he isn't in the phone book.
Yeah.
Now let me take a step back for those of you who don't remember phone books. They weren't specific to one town.
No.
Odyssey's a small area. Connellsville is the nearest place.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's not how phone books work.
They have two different phone books. Like, phone books are, at the very least, covering a county.
Yeah.
Often more.
Yeah.
And so
I believe growing up we had the Lancaster one, and then we had Lancaster and York.
Yeah. But yeah, it's so funny to me that like, whereas Jack, the story could have been Jack looked in the phone book and the address was in Connellsville. But instead they're like, no, he can't find Connellsville in the phone book. So he goes to the high school and someone gives him information for some reason, and that's how he finds it. And I'm like, you guys just made this way more complicated than it had to be, right?
Well, exactly. And the whole point is that, like, so they get his address, they accomplish what the phone book does, and they don't even, like, address it much. They just say that that's what happened.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
What?
Yeah. It's funny. And so, yeah, there's this great, and so this scene then is a lot of what we were talking about earlier of Connie and Jack and Jason and Connie just being like, so Jack, why are you so set on this? What are you gonna do? Like, what is all of this? What's the point of all this? And Jack's continues to be a little bit cagey about it. He talks about, you get the idea that it's also like a chance for him to be closer for Wit, but that, like, is kind of what he's pitching, but there's also something that we're not quite seeing.
He seems convicted about this. We'll say that.
Yeah.
And the circumstances really don't require conviction.
Right. And the thing I love about Jack's character so much is he has a lot of the qualities of Wit, but he is way less confident in himself.
Yeah, he's so much more human.
he is constantly second guessing himself. He talks about like not wanting to, like, so the reason they go to Emma Douglas is because while they have addresses for everyone else, they at least know who Emma is. And that gives him a starting point because he feels weird about going up to someone and just like saying, hey, like, what do you like?
What do you know about this one thing that happened a long time ago?
Right. Like, it matters to him that things are like that his intentions are clear and that he is not causing a disruption. And it's part of him being an outsider in Odyssey as well, where he doesn't have the repertoire that Wit did.
Well, and I think that we see that very clearly. Like, we talked about this a lot in the Case of the Secret Room, where it was like Wit just waltzes up to anybody and everybody and just gets whatever he wants out of them.
Right.
And like he just had no qualms about it. And like he's obviously not doing anything bad, but like Jack is so much more human in the sense that like the normal human hesitations that Wit doesn't have, he definitely does. And I think that's one of the reasons I like him so much.
Yeah.
Like, Wit is a very much larger-than-life character, and a lot of the characters in Odyssey are, but Jack is, like, very much a real person.
Yeah, I find myself in these re-listens having such an affection for Jack because he is so incredibly relatable in just that he lacks this utter self-confidence and is constantly just like, well, like I'm trying my best, but I don't want to ruffle feathers, and like I want to be, yeah, he's so human and I love it.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the things I like about Tom a lot too.
Yeah. It's true. He does have that. Tom does have a similar vibe as well.
And it's super, I think it's very effective in that respect. And because the whole thing is that these are characters that are kind of taking the place of Wit or functioning in the same I am older, wiser role.
Right.
And normally, if it was Wit, that would also come with confidence. But because these characters are different, it's not, and I just think it's very special. And it's really good. And so it's getting back to the episode, you know, we learn later that Jack had a dream.
Yep.
And that this dream was that somebody was in trouble. Or somebody was lost, basically.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, like we talked about them getting the address, driving out there, so they get lost. And I love this. I love the scene of them getting lost.
Yeah. It is a really great scene of them driving around on these back roads. And he and Jason talk a little bit more about the dreams thing, and Jack just makes this reference to like his dreams have become way more vivid since he's been in Odyssey, which is really, really interesting. And so they are lost deep in the thick of the Connellsville woods.
Yeah. And they're using a map, and that was the thing that kind of blew my mind. I was like,
oh yeah,
getting an address doesn't mean you know how to get somewhere anymore.
Right.
Like, even pre-smartphones, like, this is pre-GPS, like...
Yeah, and so they're on these back roads with the maps, but the roads are so small that they're not on the map.
Yeah.
And they pull over to this gas station, and the gas station has handmade maps.
Yep.
There hasn't been anybody who has taken the time to, like, map out these back roads.
Yeah.
Which is incredible.
We are truly in another land.
Yeah.
It could be Narnia. We aren't sure.
Maybe it's Maris.
Oh. I only know what that is because of the ads.
That's funny.
Because I've never listened to passages.
That's going to be a fun series when we do that one, folks. Because Andrew has not heard it.
Yep, and Dylan loves it.
Anyways, so Jack's filling up the car with gas, and Jason's inside getting directions from this guy, and then Jack walks in, and just has this. He's got that like where like he's starting to he's a thing that Odyssey uses a lot, where he's talking, and then his voice just kind of trails out, and you can tell like that he's like staring at something.
Yeah.
And the person behind who's working at the gas station, is Billy McPherson.
Yeah. So they say that they're looking for the McPhersons.
Yeah, Jason says that he's out there looking for the McPhersons, and
Yeah.
Billy's like, oh, or no, he says that they're going to an address, and like he asks where the road is, and the guy is behind the counter is like, oh, that's right around the corner. There's only one family who lives on that road. And then Jason's like, oh, we're looking for the McPhersons. He's like, well, why would you want to go to the McPhersons? And then that's where Jack's like, you're a
Billy?
like that's you.
Yeah,
You're
his
Billy
name. He's like, oh,
McPherson.
because his voice trails off, and he's like, well, your name tag says Billy.
Yep. And I like that Jason doesn't register it and just like keeps going.
Yeah.
And Jack's like, no. Like, this is the guy we're looking for.
Target acquired.
Yep.
we figured it out.
And so Billy yells to Frank, and then they go over to a diner to sit down and talk about things.
Man, I miss going to diners.
Yeah. The before times were so good, guys.
They were.
We didn't know what we had.
You know, the closest thing I ever came to missing diners this much was when I was in Italy, and I just craved pancakes so bad. I was like, I just want diner food so bad. I'm done with apricots. I need maple syrup right now.
But yeah, and what? So they Jack and Jason are then just asking Billy about the Israelites, and he explains that they were, this group of kids who 2 or 3 nights a week went around helping people out. It only lasted for about 2 summers because they became interested in girls at the third summer, which I think is
It was
fun.
hilarious.
And then he talks about the fact that he just talks about how great Whit was, how good of a Sunday school teacher he was, and that he hasn't really been going to church anymore.
Well, and that's because we didn't touch on it earlier. Emma Douglas also said the same thing about Whit, where she was talking about the Israelites and said, oh, Whit would do anything to make the Bible come alive. And that's basically like,
yep,
that's like kind of a theme this episode, is that like Whit did this thing to make the Bible come alive.
Right. Because, and we didn't really talk about it, but the group, from what Jason and Emma kind of made it sound like, started out as a group,
The sort of Bible study almost.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Is them maybe like acting out Bible stories and that sort of thing, and then became this like, well, like, let's take what we're learning and put it into practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
that's the kind of gang that I could get involved in, like gang gardening. Yo.
Yeah. Dude, they're both.
That's how I'm gonna break quarantine, man. I'm gonna break social distancing with my gardening gang.
both reading the book and listening to this episode just gave me such a beautiful nostalgia for like that era of being a kid.
Oh yeah.
And just like, oh man, like these were the sort of things that like ran through my head and were just like this is like everything I wanted. And it rings true to like how good of an idea that is, that like on the surface it seems like, could you like, you would really get kids to like do more chores, but when you turn it into an adventure like Whit did, like you absolutely
100%.
get it.
And if you're doing it with like friends that you like I mean,
Yeah.
that's basically what life groups were.
Yeah.
Or what they were supposed to be, at least.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, it's like service becomes so much more fun when you're doing it with people you like.
Absolutely. And I just
Fun fact, the Wad Fam Chalk Pod was founded via a service project that me and Dylan did together.
yeah, kind of was. But yeah, and it's a true testament to McCusker's skill as a writer, that he can so well capture that like energy of being a kid and like wanting to do all this stuff, because it is we talked last episode about how good like both Lawler and McCusker are at doing these like mysteries and like how impressive a feat that is, but also it is incredible how well just the stuff about being a kid is written.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's so good. And it's actually very interesting to me right now because of the nature of quarantine, I guess. I don't know. I have a lot of younger kids in my neighborhood that I'm not super close with, and just yesterday I was coming home from work and I saw 3 kids that were probably, all of them are in elementary school, at the top of the hill next to my house, and they were gonna race down to the bottom. And like, I used to do that all the time with my friends. And it was just this, like, weird thing that, like, somehow in this situation that feels so distinct from everything that I've ever experienced, there's, like, I don't know, some sort of subconscious calling that even people that are completely different than me are feeling to do these things that I did. And I think that the Israelites are similar in that respect.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. And so, yeah, Jack and Jason decide to give Billy the Israelite Chronicles, this book they found, in a move that I just love so much, that gesture.
I love his reaction to it. He was like,
yeah,
no, I can't have this. Like, this is important. Like, I shouldn't have this.
And they're like, no. And I love that they, like, that even though this was Wit's possession, they never second-guess themselves in that. Just with this utter confidence, they're like, we need to give this to this guy, and, like Wit's not going to have an issue with that.
Yeah.
Like, this is the correct play, and, like, the confidence in that I love after we've had just seen Jack not be confident.
Yeah, well, and this kind of leads us into the whole dream part of the episode, which we kind of touched on, which is so basically Jack has these reoccurring dreams about is it about the Israelites? I mean, it's about somebody being lost and needing help, and that's for sure.
It seems intentionally vague enough, but so at this point they've left Billy, and it's just Jack and Jason. Billy's gone.
They've given him... So they gave him the book after they had a conversation about him not going to church.
Right. Yep.
And then they kind of have this thing where he's like, you should go back to church. And he's like, you know what? Maybe I will.
Right. And then he leaves and goes back to the gas station. And that's when Jason's like, hey, like, Jack, that guy was in your dream, right? Because you knew who he was even before you saw the name tag. Mm-hmm. And Jack's kind of like, yeah, like I've been having this dream of someone who is lost, and kind of everything that we did today kind of echoed back to that and led us to this person. Yeah, which is super cool.
Yeah. And is that where the episode goes out?
The episode goes out on Jack saying, hey, maybe it's time to restart the Israelites.
Yeah, basically, like, it's like, because of circumstances now with this increased crime.
Right. Maybe that's what Odyssey needs.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where the episode goes out.
Yeah.
But
it is a very interesting move on them kind of doing the dreams and the more supernatural side of things. Very uncharacteristic of Odyssey, as we mentioned. And I like how it plays it down.
Mm-hmm.
But I also I like how it plays it down, not because it's not important, but because Jack is, one, not looking for glory for himself, and two, not super confident and jumping to, it makes him relatable.
It does, and it makes it feel very much like he is being led to this place.
Mm-hmm.
He is not.
He's being drawn. He's not finding it.
Exactly. This isn't. He was delivered a clear message on what to do, and he is now going to do it. It's like with every step of the journey, he is just following the nudges from God that he's feeling, and it's leading him to this outcome.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Yeah, no, it is really cool, and I like that. I wish, the more supernatural and the more charismatic side of the faith, I think, transfers to media kind of poorly, typically. I think that there's a very distinctly part of humanness that is involved with that side of Christianity that I think that oftentimes, if you try and put it in media, it gets distorted, where either they're too confident, or they downplay it completely, or it ends up falling in either extreme more so than I think it ever really shows in real life. And I think that this is actually a decent comparison to kind of feel what it feels like to be drawn by something vague but of God.
Yeah. You cool if I hit you with some discussion questions?
Go for it.
Why did Jack feel it was so important to unravel the mystery of the Israelites?
Well, I mean, it seems like the Holy Spirit's the easy answer there. I think that it probably started off with just genuine curiosity. This is interesting. Because it is so unique, and I remember hearing that as a kid and being like, yeah, why don't those things exist? and I think that Odyssey knows that I think that, and I think that Focus on the Family knows that I think that, and they're playing on that, which is kind of why you hear that this is an exceptionally good idea 3 or 4 times this episode.
Yeah.
From different characters. So that'd be the end of my answer. I mean, what do you think?
No, I'm with you. It seems like he is very much being guided towards this end. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's
so interesting because it feels like Wit operates so in touch with God that he doesn't ever seem drawn.
Right.
It's not a spirit influencing on him, it's his spirit, Yeah. Because his spirit is so close to that of God.
Right.
And he functions as the God character.
Right. No, you're absolutely right in that respect. Question 2, I think is kind of funny, but do you think Jack's dreams meant anything?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I think
Focus on the Family, you're showing your colors.
I think that the episode makes it very clear that these dreams mean something.
Yeah. No, definitely.
But then the part B of that question is, have you ever had dreams like Jack?
Oh, yes. Yes, I have. The one that comes to mind first was a couple months after my grandfather had died. I was really young, I don't know, maybe 11 at the time. And I remember, obviously it was very upsetting, but I just went to bed and I had a dream and it was super vivid, and it was me and my younger sister in the backseat of their car, and he was driving and my grandmother was in the passenger seat in the front, And he just looked back at me and said, like, it's okay. Like, I'm good. And just being like, huh.
Yeah.
1, wasn't looking for that. 2, that's amazing. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
For all of the stupid stuff I have done and said in my life, I for some reason have a very sensitive spirit, I guess, in that sense. Like, I find interacting with that to be more normal for me, to have those kinds of feelings and experiences, which is weird. And I don't necessarily know how, because I don't really feel like it's because I'm a super good Christian or anything like that, or like I grind really hard to be like in touch with the heart of God. I mean, it's true that I do. Like, I take my, my Christian walk very seriously, but I think that, like, just as other people have different types of gifts, that has just been something that I've always naturally kind of had experiences with without really wanting them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Whereas I'll be on the opposite end where I'm like, nope, never have had any dreams like that. I barely have dreams of the normal kind.
Exactly. And that's like, yeah. And that is just as good, if not better.
Yeah. Well, like, it's not to invalidate anybody's experience. It's just like, yeah, I can happily live in a world where you experience that, like, faith in that way, and I do not.
Yeah,
like, I don't
exactly.
I don't think
and it's
everything needs to be the same to everyone.
Mm-hmm. And it's not a hierarchy of faith.
No.
So.
Yeah. And then just, do you think a good gang is a good idea?
Yes.
And would you like to be a part of the Israelites?
As long as gardening's involved, 100%.
Yeah.
I'm not much into painting, but I'll garden.
Yeah, I do.
Although gardening by moonlight feels like a terrible idea.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I do feel this, which is...
Also, how many times do you think they painted something and somebody accidentally touched it?
So many. But my thing with this is, I think this episode, it does set forth this really cool idea of, like, what if there's this gang that's, like, doing good deeds in secret and whatnot, but it also makes it fanciful to a degree that I think makes it hard to then be applicable.
Oh, 100%.
Like they're building up this such an idealistic form of, like, well, what if, like, everything, everything perfectly aligned, and, like, we had this group of really close kids with this wise adult mentor who could, like, organize all this stuff, and then, like, we do it in secret in the night, and all of our parents are cool with it and all that, where I'm like...
And all of our parents are cool with it.
And where I'm like, it doesn't take this much of an adventure to serve.
Oh, no, not at all.
Like, and I think it's...
And it doesn't take that much of an adventure to make serving enjoyable.
Right. I think it's sometimes lost, especially on me as a kid, of being like, man, this is so cool, but, like, that's never going to happen to me. And so that's just where it ends. And recognizing, like, no, there are other ways to serve. You can do all this stuff, on a much less frequent basis. Like, 2 or 3 times a week is, like, that's a lot of organizational legwork, and we don't have a wit. But, like, can you get a group of people together once a month to go help out something? Like, absolutely. Like, it is...
And they can know that you're coming, and you can still be humble about it, and it's still important.
Right. Like, I think it is a really cool thing that these episodes do, and I love this idea, but also we need to recognize that in our own lives, it doesn't have to be unattainable. Like, this is something that we can pull off in different ways, And service also doesn't have to be going out and doing physical labor for people.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
And so I think it's
especially right now.
Yeah. Well, yes.
For some reason, I had this kind of analogy come to my head, and stop me if it's completely ridiculous. But like, it seems like the Israelites are like superheroes, and like what service looks like for most people, and in my life, is more like being a doctor, where it's like, yes, we're both saving lives, but like one of us is very like practical and like rooted in reality, and like they know what's happening and I know what's happening, and like I'm doing this thing because I want to, and because, you know, it's for the good of them, and they appreciate that, you know.
Yeah. But
it's not larger than life. You don't have to, you don't need a god figure to make that happen. Like,
yes.
You know.
Yep. No, I'm in agreement with you on that. I think that's very much how I feel as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All in all, I mean, I love the Israelites. I'm
Yeah.
actually super excited to, like, when we were talking about covering Blackgaard, I kind of remembered loosely that the Israelites were involved, and I was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good stuff. Like, I'm excited for what's to come. This was just it was just a really nice break in pace for like a pretty frantic series.
Yeah.
Up until this point, it was nice to just have a smaller story. And yeah. So that's the episode.
Yeah. Do you have anything you'd like to promote?
Weirdly enough, I've got a slew of stuff I want to talk about here at the end.
You just go for it, man. Just go for it.
So, big thing off the top, a huge shout out to our continual supporter of this podcast, Mr. Lee of the AIO Wiki. He in this past week reached out with the 1992 to 1998 theme with no words.
Really?
He got it from hopeful friend of the show, Nathan Hubler.
Whoa! What?
And
Hubler?
So you now have heard that at the top of the show.
I know Lee, and Lee knows Hubler. So in an essence, I know Hubler.
So yeah, you listeners, you will have heard that at the beginning. You'll hear it again here at the end. But yeah, we have the correct theme now.
What a hero!
Which is so exciting to me.
Thank you, Hoobs, and thank you, Lee. You are God amongst men. Thank you.
That was such an exciting email to receive.
Yeah, me and Dylan didn't talk about this off mic, so this is my first time hearing this.
No, I thought about bringing it up at the top, and then I was like, actually, like I want to tell everyone about that.
Yeah.
And so I'll do it in the episode. So, yeah, thank you for hearing our pleas and for sending that in. And yeah,
Lee responds to please.
That was very exciting. So that's not really a plug, just something cool that happened. That I wanted everyone to know about.
Did you Venmo him a sheep in exchange?
I should. And then additionally, I just recently, last week, put out my spring playlist. So for anybody who's been following the progression of our playlists, or of my playlists rather. This is
Dylan doesn't let me get involved in this playlist.
No, this is the 5th installment. It's entitled "A Bizarre Spring," because that's what it's been. So if you like, I don't know, moody alt rock, go check that out. I'll put a link in the show notes.
Listen through it. If you don't like it, never have to listen to it again.
Yeah, that's fair. And then finally, a podcast that I enjoy quite a bit, the Unmade podcast, did a experimental episode where they released 15 minutes of one side of a podcast and asked people to fill in the other half of that podcast, however they feel. And I did that, and I made it into the final cut.
Wow.
So I will be putting that in the description.
What was it about?
It was just one person talking. It wound up being, I think, mostly about the moon. But
interesting.
I will, I'll throw that link down there too. It's like a, 60 minutes of an episode, and I am maybe in 5 minutes. But it was still a fun moment for me. And
yeah, no, it's great.
I thought maybe you people would appreciate that.
Why do you think that we read all the reviews? It is such a extreme dopamine rush to be recognized by the creators of things you like.
Yeah, that's fair. I do like that. It was interesting to hear bits and pieces. So like the way they did it, because they had a bunch of different people send in these clips, they then like cut them up and intersperse them all throughout.
Oh, okay.
And so like it's not like there's like a 5-minute stretch with me in it. But like I randomly appear a couple times throughout the episode. So
there you go.
That was a fun thing to get to experience and enjoy. And so yeah, if you feel like it, you can do the same. And also, it's just a fun podcast.
Yeah.
So maybe, if I can be the gateway for you guys into a better podcast than what I make, that would be really cool.
But in all reality, thank you to Johnny Youngblood, who reached out to us on Anchor.
Yes.
He sent in some clips. It's only 1:30 here, but it's safe to say that that made my day.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
We always appreciate, the voice memo feature in Anchor is a really fun way. It's not as public as a review, but it is more personal. And yeah, so thank you to Johnny for sending in one of those. And if other people would like to do so, I'd be cool with that as well.
Yeah, and it can be comments or it can be questions, like if there's even like requests to cover specific episodes and stuff like that, anything like that.
If you've got, I'm going to throw this out here and we'll see what happens, but if you have thoughts about an episode that is upcoming, and you want to drop those in before we cover it, maybe that'll get edited into the episode depending on what happens. So
yeah.
If you want to do what I did and appear in an episode of a show you like, who knows? Maybe that'll happen.
I'll root for you. Dylan, I can tell, is hesitant, but I'll root for you, mysterious person who's anchoring in.
Well, yeah. I mean, it'll I will accept listener questions about upcoming episodes or snide comments or that sort of thing. But know that sending something in doesn't necessarily mean you'll be on the show, but I do still like you.
Yes. And we do appreciate it greatly. And we do listen to all of them.
Yes. Listen to all of them, read all the reviews, read all the emails, I read all the tweets. Like, I try and respond when I can, but if something is headed my way, I have seen it, and in most circumstances, I have shared it with Andrew as well. So, even if you don't hear back from me, know that you are heard and you are appreciated.
Yeah. Even when you don't say nice stuff.
Yeah. And with that being said, we are finishing out this episode. And next week, we start the first episode of Darkness Before Dawn. Kind of our Blackgaard finale, 12-parter. The battle lines of Blackgaard.
Yep.
And that episode is called Small Fires, Little Pools. We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Goodbye.
Wadfam Chalkpod is a presentation of the Lidditz Podcast Co-op. This show is a fan podcast and has no official affiliation with Adventures in Odyssey or Focus on the Family. As such, the copyright is ours under Creative Commons. Follow the podcast at Wadfam Chalkpod on Twitter and Instagram, or email us at wadfamchalkpod@gmail.com. A Code of Honor was hosted by Dylan Weaver and Andrew Sabo and edited by Dylan Weaver. And I'm Nathan Haverstick, hoping you'll join us again next time for more of the Wad Fam Chalk Pod.